Hello and welcome to the Street Crime UK YouTube channel. Please don't forget to like, share, comment and subscribe. Today we look at a rapper who was known as Big Keyz and has said that he had been in a drugs den to use a toilet and had no idea the property was being used by the Hollywood drugs line to cut up high purity Class A. The 32-year-old, whose real name is Akil Finlayson, had told a jury at Oxford Crown Court that he had travelled from his native London to Oxford on November the 11th, 2019 to watch a film with his partner and her child. However, the jurors did not believe the story told by the rapper, who was also a member of the collective ICB boys, and took 2 hours to convict him and his co-defendant, Mohammed Faki, who was 30, of conspiracy to supply Class A drugs. A third man, Karim Hamdan, who was 23, had travelled up from London to smoke cannabis and play video games with a football teammate, Faki. He was cleared of the charges. The police arrested Mr. Faki and Mr. Hamdan in St. Mary's and St. John's churchyard off Cowley Road after seeing them with a group of known addicts. Mr. Faki had the Hollywood drugs line on him, while wraps of drugs were found in a compost bin in the churchyard. A key which was found on the men led officers to a property in Emperor Gardens near Oxford United's Kassam Stadium. When they opened the door, the police found Yanis Young, who was 36, who later admitted being involved in the Hollywood drugs line, and there was another man in the house. Mr. Finlayson fled through the garden and over a back fence, discarding wraps of drugs as he ran. Inside the house and in a compost heap in the churchyard where Mr. Faki and Mr. Hamdan were arrested, police discovered drugs with an estimated value of £4,900 if they were sold in the weights they were found, or up to £9,500 if cut up to £10 street deals. Drugs expert Bryn Lewis of Thames Valley Police said a message sent from the drugs line phone on November the 2nd to 6 numbers was consistent with typical advertising messages. The message read, "I am on Hollywood, bigger and better." The wraps of drugs which were found were consistently underweight, with quarter-ounce deals which usually weigh 7 grams, ranging between 6.3 and 6.8. Mr. Lewis said that was not uncommon, and he had seen other lines selling lighter weights. Giving evidence in his own defence, Mr. Finlayson denied being involved with dealing drugs. He said he'd been at Emperor Gardens to return a phone to the householder, a friend of his partner's, who'd left the mobile at a party in London, and to use the toilet. He said that he had a spliff on him and panicked when police knocked the door, and that he was only in Oxford to go cinema with his partner and her child. Mr. Faki also denied taking part in the county line's drug dealing operation, claiming that he'd been invited to stay in Oxford after he was thrown out by his parents. He was addicted to heroin, and on the day he was caught, he had agreed to take a phone to another man who he suggested was in the Cowley Road graveyard. Mr. Hamdan told jurors he had paid £70 to be driven from London to meet his friend Mr. Faki, who he'd said he'd met playing football. They had planned to play video games and smoke cannabis together. Mr. Hamdan of Valley Drive, Brent, denied knowing his friend was a drug dealer. He had naively helped to rat drugs up and waited in a taxi as Mr. Faki visited his friends in Oxford. Mr. Finlayson of Helperby Road, Halsden, and Mr. Faki of Fisher's Way, Wembley, were remanded in custody to be sentenced at a later date. On November the 19th, the men were brought back for sentencing. Mitigating on behalf of Mr. Finlayson, Oliver Doherty said his client had worked with Charity United Borders, speaking to youngsters at risk of a life of crime about his experience of dealing drugs, and he has been drawn back into criminality for whatever reason. We rely on his charity work and his attempts at legitimate work as a rapper and a music promoter to demonstrate that he is somebody who has at least tried to move himself away from this path. Judge Michael Gledhill QC jailed Akil Finlayson, who was a third strike drug dealer, for 8 years. Yanis Young, who was 36, was caught in the Emperor Gardens drug house when police raided it in November of 2019. Mr. Young was given 5 years and 4 months imprisonment. Judge Gledhill ordered that the jail sentence would be served after a 6-year term which was imposed by Bournemouth Crown Court in 2020 for robbing a Dorset bookies at gunpoint. Mohammed Faki, who was 30, was sentenced to 4.5 years in prison. He had been caught by plainclothes police officers at St Mary's Churchyard in Cowley Road. Mr Finlayson of Helperby Road, Halsden, and Mr Faki of Fisher's Way, Wembley, were found guilty of conspiracy to supply Class A drugs earlier this month. Mr Young, formerly of Guy's Marsh Prison, Shaftesbury, pleaded guilty to the charges last year. Following the sentencing, PC Chris Kidd of St Aldate's Police Station said, "This investigation has had substantial impact on the operations of gangs from the London area, who come up to set up base in Oxford in order to conduct and run county line drug businesses. The effect of drug dealing is plain to see in most towns and cities, and these gang members exploit vulnerable drug users in order to make money for self-greed. We will not tolerate those who seek to carry out this damaging and harmful activity." Thank you for joining us today. What are your opinions on the crimes committed by Mr Finlayson, Mr Young and Mr Faki? Do you believe the sentences were too harsh or not harsh enough? Please let us know what you think in the comments below. Thank you for joining us today. If you enjoyed this content, please don't forget to like and share. And if you're new to the channel and you want to see more Street Crime UK content, please don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell so you can join us on the next video. Thank you for joining us, and until next time, stay safe.